Hello, it's Melinda from Scrapbookingncraft. How you all going today? So, just doing a voiceover for this sped up version of my live Facebook class that was on in July 2023. So just here, just flipping through a few of our new products, a few of our new napkins my daughter sells on my website. End up using one of them in the layout, in the art journal page. And then I show you a couple of stencils and some words. I end up using one of the words. So this is part of our new July release for 2023. So this video is on YouTube twice, once as the full, there's some new stencils, once as the full version, or this is a sped up version if you just want an overall view of the mini class. Or you can sit through the entire class and follow along with the real-time version. It's up to you. Sometimes I like watching either ones on YouTube, so I decided to put them both up. Just showing you there some handmade papers I picked up, I think, at Lincraft, and here's some old book paper. So we started our page with that. So I'm working in a A4 sized, or an 8x10 or 9x11, something like that. So it's quite a large art journal. It's a double page. But this part of my art journal has actually fallen out, or I took it out after it half fell out because my art journal expanded too big. So it's just a few collection of pages that will go beside my art journal on the bookshelf when it's finished. I think we've got one double page and one single page to go. So just adding some of the music, really old vintage book paper that I tore up using some matte medium. So matte medium is an adhesive, so I like to put it underneath the papers. And matte medium works for thinner papers. If you've got thicker papers, use what we call a gel medium, which is a heavier consistency and it has a heavier hold. But I like the matte medium because it's nice and thin, and this old paper was nice and thin. So just going over the paper, under the paper where I'm going to stick it on my art journal page, and then over the top, just to seal the paper. It does a couple of things. It glues it down. It also seals it on the top. So if I accidentally put paint where I don't want paint, I do have the option of wiping it off. It's called matte gel medium, matte as in meaning not shiny. So you almost don't see it on the page. Once the paint and stuff and other napkins are on there, you don't see it at all. So just using a silicone spatula to apply that, so I don't have to wash a paintbrush. I'm a lazy artist. Gave that a quick dry. Then I realised it didn't have to be 100% dry for the next step. I'm going to use that Girl with the Florally Dress, which is one of our new shapes released in July 2023. So this is a napkin I've decided to use. Napkins are fantastic. My daughter has about 750 different designs on my website. Every time we go out, it's, Mum, she's 15, it's always, Mum, do we have this napkin? And Mum has to think really, really hard and go, I don't think so. And if it's an I don't think so or a no, it follows us home. But it's lots of fun. She helps me pick orders, and she does the accounting for the napkins and does all the counting, and it's like her little side hustle business. So it's really cool. And napkins are so much fun. So we sell them in packs of 2 on the website. So 2 of the one design. I call it the one you use and the one you stuff up. So here I'm just separating the part of the napkin I want with the water cutting technique. So you grab a paintbrush and you just want a damp paintbrush, and napkins are really, really fragile. So to start with the napkin, you tear off the back layer, or separate the back layer, which is the white layer. Some napkins have 2 white layers, some have 1. So you just separate it down until you have this really thin piece of paper. And because it's really thin, you've got to be really, really careful. So if you have a fuzzy edge on your napkin, is it a torn edge or the water cutting method, which makes a fuzzy edge, it disappears into your page a lot more than a cut edge. Clear as mud, right? Yes. So if you want any more of that explained, swap to the other video and I'll go through it in detail. It's just a quick overskim here. So someone in the live asked what journal I'm working in, and it looks like a Delusions journal, but it's not. Don't be fooled. It is one from Right Art and Craft, and don't really recommend them. The paper's great for what I'm doing, but if you want to do sprays or anything like that, the paper is not as good as a Delusions journal. But I like to try things, so I grabbed a couple when they're on super duper sale a couple of years back, and working through my stash of journals I have accumulated, empty journals. So adding the napkin down, so again I use the matte gel medium and put a generous amount on my art journal page. Gently put my napkin on top, and then gently using the matte gel medium on my brush, working from the inside of the napkin, the middle out, gently brushing over the top to seal it in. Does two things. It will glue it completely on, and again, it seals it. So if you make an accidental oopsie with the next step of paint or ink, you can wipe it away without it soaking into the napkin. If you don't put the layer on top, the napkin is raw paper, and whatever you put on top will soak into the napkin and you can't remove. Again, in the live, someone came in and asked what my website was. I didn't go and edit a lot of those things out. I should have. I'm being a bit lazy today. So I just tore another piece of that napkin out because it didn't quite meet my page, and you almost can't see where I've joined the two napkins together. If you've got a magnifying glass and got really close to my page, you could probably pick it, but hey, from the distance I'm looking at it, you can't see it. So napkins are really translucent, so they're very see-through. So wherever you see white on the napkin, so the white behind the birds, between the birds and the branches, almost disappears when you glue it down. So bear that in mind. Depending on what's in your background is what will show through your napkin. Now, I put it over the music paper, which I was fine at. At the moment, it's a bit dark. I'll fix that later. Wait for that. I'll fix that later. So just bear in mind, when you first start playing with napkins, they are very translucent when stuck on, especially if there's a lot of white area. So experiment away. We also, our napkins start at a pack of 2 for 75 cents. So if you're experimenting and stuff it up, you haven't wasted a lot of money. You haven't wasted a $5 piece of collage paper. So practice on napkins, which is really good. So I'm just going through this little collection of handmade papers that I got at Lincraft yonkies ago. Trying to be good and deep dive my stash for things that I bought and thought was a good idea but hadn't used. So just wanting to add a bit more grounding to the bottom of my page where my girl is going to sit and where my quote is going to sit. I do a lot of scene sort of pages, so they have ground, front ground, foreground, middle ground, background. I don't do a lot of abstract, where things are just floating. I don't know, it's just my head. One day you wouldn't want to go rummaging around my head, you never know what you find. So I sort of, the yellow and orange in the napkin and also in these handmade papers dictated how the colours in my page went. So the napkins are a good inspiration for using colours. Because these handmade papers are a bit thicker in their design or in their paperweight, I am using a gel, a Little Birdie. I don't believe this is available anymore. Again, using up old stuff. It's by Little Birdie brand. Again, I got it at Lincraft. Acrylic soft gel medium. It has a more of a gel consistency, so it holds heavier papers down. As I said, I'm trying to deep dive my stuff and use up a lot of stuff. I prefer a Dina Wakley or a Tim Holtz gel medium, but I'm just using up bits and pieces before I go repurchase things that have run out in my house. Trying to be a good girl. We're all going to be good in our stash and use up things? Yeah, that sort of works for a few days and then goes off the rails. So just giving that a good dry off. Plus, also, if you have any liquids in your stash, liquid adhesives, liquid paints, they sort of have a shelf life. I went to open a new pot of that the other day and it was completely sealed. Yes, I'd had it for a few years in my stash, but that is beside the point. It was, when I opened the seal, it was totally hardened. So anything with a liquid base does have a shelf life. So do get your products out and use them up. Paints are not so bad if they're in a sealed tube or a sealed jar. They tend to last. I've had some paints that I'm still using 15 years later. It just depends on the type of jar that the manufacturers use. And I suppose it depends on how long it's been sitting on the manufacturer's shelf as well. I'm off in a tangent, aren't I? So now I grab some paints, some acrylic paints. So I've got a selection of Dina Wakley, and I apologise I didn't write the colours down. So I've got a selection of Dina Wakley, Tim Holtz and Delusions. Now, they're all acrylic-based paints. Yes, they have slightly different properties. Delusions paints are a bit more liquid. Dina Wakley paints are a bit more heavy body, so a bit thicker. And Distress paints, Tim Holtz paints do really funky stuff. But I was looking at what colours I had. So I always mix up and use my stash of paints and things by colour as opposed to manufacturer. Some people go, ooh, you can't use a Dina Wakley paint with the Delusions. I go, yeah, you can. Throw it on your page. It all works in well. So just finger painting. I love finger painting. It somehow connects me more to my journal. Plus, I don't have to wash a paintbrush. See? Lazy crafter. And it also, when you're using your finger, you don't get any brush lines. You get a smoother effect. It goes on a lot thinner. I'm just justifying not using a brush here, but hey, use a brush if you want to use a brush. My daughter's the exact opposite of me, hates paint on her fingers. So she uses brushes all the time. But I don't know, it's something 99% of the time if I'm applying paint to my page, it's with my finger because it's just fun that way. So just sort of building up the bottom and trying to connect those pattern papers and the music papers that almost disappeared, but hey, when you're layering, you don't know where the next layer is going to go, so you just go with it. Took me a while to get my head around that. Why are you sticking all this stuff down you don't see at the end? Because you don't know where you're going to stick it, so you just go for it. It's all about the process. For me, art journaling, while I'm drying that off, is all about the journey to get to the end of the page than the end of the page. Yes, this page is growing on me. I didn't like it when I did it in the live, of course. And it grew on me. I do like it. It's different colours than I usually do, so I think that's what's throwing my brain off a bit, but I do like it. So for me, it's not about the end result, and a lot of art journalers, especially new art journalers, get hooked up in looking at an art journaler that's been doing it for 10 years, 5 years, and makes these beautiful pages and expects their pages to look that way. And it's like, for me, that's not what art journaling is. Art journaling is about play. It's about taking time out of my busy day. It's about sitting down at my desk and getting messy. So if I get to the end of the art journal page and I don't like it, I don't care. So I grabbed out some watercolours. So I wanted to put some colour into the top of the page, but with the napkin going down first, I didn't want to put the acrylic paints up there because of the fact that they're more opaque and they will cover up what's on the napkin. Should have thought of that and put the colour down before I put the napkin on, but hey, well, we didn't think of that, did we? So these are just some Audi watercolours I grabbed a few years ago. And just... sorry about that, I thought my daughter was coming in the room. So these are watercolours from Audi, so they're quite translucent in their colour. So they will go over the top of the napkin and sort of sit on top of that matte medium that I put there. If I hadn't have put the matte medium on top of the napkin, it would have soaked into the napkin and altered the colour more. Clear as mud? Right. So I also bring some of the watercolours down on top of the acrylic paint I've done down the bottom, just to sort of tie it in and colour up my page, which the colours worked really well. The colours I had in the watercolours, and which is only a basic cheap set from Audi, works really well. As you can tell, I like sort of experimenting with more affordable things and like experimenting with different manufacturers, and I will give art supplies a go. And sometimes I don't like them, and that's okay. I haven't wasted a lot of money. So I brought those papers back in because I was thinking about putting some colour behind her skirt just to make it stand out a bit more from the page, but I ended up not doing that. So if I had a more probably busier background, I sort of deliberately left it quite plain under where her skirt was going to go. If I had deliberately put more colour and more texture there, I would have probably backed her skirt with another colour, which is simply sticking the black die cut onto the paper and just cutting around the outer edge, which is quite simple to do. So now I'm just deciding to play with some stencils. You'll see me keep bringing that black focal image in and placing it on my page where it is as I'm going. I do that so I get an idea of where it is and what I want to add around it, and I usually stick it down at the end. So this is one of our new 8x8 stencils, this lovely doily flower. And all these stencils are available on my website, and my website is Scrapbooking and it's always linked in the description box of the YouTube videos. So this is what we call reverse stenciling, and I must admit I stuff it up the first time, but that's okay. I leave all my mistakes in to show you. So reverse stenciling, so traditionally when you have a stencil, you put the stencil down and you put the paint through the holes. This time we are putting the paint down first and removing it through the holes. So you get and the stencil moved and it yuck, and I wiped it all off. Now, this technique will only work on a page that has paint on it, or on a page that has gesso on it, or on a page that has matte gel medium on it. So a sealed paper. So I was able to wipe that paint off when I stuffed it up. Of course, in a live, I stuff it up on Facebook, don't I? I can do it a million times off camera and it works. So doing it again with a baby wipe, just wiping the colour away through the holes of the stencil, and it leaves you with the negative part of the stencil. So what the stencil actually looks like in your hand as opposed to what it looks like when you've put paint through it. So just drying that off. So it gives you more of a like a lacy effect. So the black lacy effect, I wanted to bring some black into the bottom of the page. I knew my title was going to be black and I knew my black cutout was going to be black. So I had to tongue-tied. So I had to introduce some more black into some other areas of the page. So that's why I decided it'll be the black stenciling around the page. So just working out which title I'm going to use. So this makes me happy is the title I've decided to use. And it's just going to go on that left-hand side of the page. So I decided the background was a bit plain. It didn't have enough texture or, I suppose texture is the right word. It was looking a bit plain just with the paint and the watercolour. So I jazz it up with a bit of my stencils. So just grabbing some white gesso. And I'm going to use a makeup sponge to put some gesso through this really, really cool dotty stencil that I've got. So it just makes some clusters of dots and it's bringing some white back into the page as well. I tend to cover the entire page with paint and napkins and stuff and then have to bring white in at the end. So in the last few releases, I've done a lot of what we call mark making stencils. So there's ones like this that have little dots on it. There's one that has like paint marks on it, paint brush stripes. A lot of people said that they struggle to know what sort of mark to make and are a bit hesitant to do it freehand. So we've developed some what we call little mark making stencils, and you can just put some paint through them or some ink and they work really, really well. So just again, sort of deciding what goes where. And I decided while I was thinking that the border of the page just needed something to border it. I border a lot of my pages just because it gives the page an end. Sometimes the border is elaborate, sometimes it's just a bit of paint like this around the edge. And again, the black ties in with everything and brings that black up to the top of the page as well. So you've sort of got black in that front foreground, which is where we do the reverse stenciling. We've got black in the middle ground, which are our two laser cutouts that I stick on the page in a minute. And then we've got the bit of black around the top of the page as well. So bringing that colour or that darkness to the top of the page. See, there's a method in my madness some days. Some days there's not. So again, placing those images around and just sort of working out where they'll best be. And then apparently I got white paint on my black cutout. So we just put some more black paint on top of it. I don't know where that white bit of paint come from. So I tend to like to ground my images. So when I, I'm not gluing it on yet. No, I grab my ink drawer. So these are some archival inks that I'm picking out in sort of the same colours, yellows, pinkies, greeny colours. And I'm going to put some more texture into the background using the stencils. And repeating a few of the stencils that I've used. So I'm going to use the little dot stencil and also the big stencil I used with the black down the bottom. So I love using these ink blending brushes. They work fantastic with, They work fantastic with detailed stencils because you get a really detailed look. And you can start off really light and then you can get a lot heavier. So it's hard to see in this, but I will put some still photos at the end and show off the detail. So just wanting to add a bit more texture, a bit more colour, a bit more action, sort of elements, that's the word I may be looking for, in that area in the middle, but I didn't want it to be standing out too much. So this is a great way to add subtleness. The reason I'm using archival inks is usually I don't know what's going to go on top of this, so the archival inks are permanent and will not run. But if you're sure that you're not going to put any wet medium on top, you can also use distress inks or any ink pad that matches your colours. So just adding a few dots here and there. Trying to add that interest and effects to that middle part, but not overdoing it as well. Knowing when to stop is hard. Still trying to learn that. I still do sometimes. More than I would like. So the page is almost coming together, nearly finished. Just having a bit of a think. Ooh, aren't my hands terrible? They're all coloured in black gesso, which is nothing unusual. So I think I'm going to commit and stick. No, I take some white. And what am I doing with the white? Okay. So I've decided that the music paper in the top is bugging me. It's too dark. So I'm trying with the white gesso. It's not really working. So then I decided that hey, there's a white watercolour. Don't usually use the white watercolour. And the white watercolour is more opaque than I thought it would be, which worked out really, really well. So just try to knock back that darkness of the music paper so it's not so prominent when it jumps out at jumps out on your page. Does that make sense? Clear as mud, right? But I also wanted to be a bit careful. I didn't want to dull any of the napkin that was stuck over the book paper. In hindsight, I probably should have put some white gesso over the music paper before I put the napkin on, just to knock it back a bit and just to make it a bit more not so pronounced as the napkin went over the top. But what I did in the end worked well enough. Lesson learned for next time, hey? So just using some good old craft glue from Couture Creations to stick down my laser cuts. So these 2 laser cuts are done by my business, and they're made with 210 GSM cardstock. So they're made with like regular cardstock you scrapbook with. So they're nice and thin for your art journal. And being black, you don't have to colour them or anything, which is fantastic. Most of the shapes are reversible. Obviously the words are not, but the girl can face sort of either directions. And if you're going to turn her over, sometimes there's a few little burn marks on the back of the black, and you can just put a layer of black paint on and you can cover those up. So most of our images are reversible. So I think that's just about our page done. I will pop some photos at the end so you can see some close-up detail. And thank you very much for watching our video. And all these products can be found on our website. And the link is in the description box below. Thank you very much and have a great day. Here's some of the close-up photos. And there's more close-up photos on our Facebook page, which is the same name as this YouTube channel as well. Bye for now.